Democrats have announced articles of impeachment against Donald Trump. It is a historic day. However, some are questioning some of the other actions Democrats have taken when it comes to the Trump administration today. But with that said, they have decided to focus on two main charges. And those charges include abuse of power and obstruction of justice. With that said, let's go to Jerry Nadler making the announcements and also providing some justification for these charges.
The House Committee on the Judiciary is introducing two articles of impeachment charging the President of the United States, Donald J. Trump, with committing high crimes and misdemeanors. The first article is for abuse of power. It is an impeachable offense for the President to exercise the powers of his public office to obtain an improper personal benefit while ignoring or injuring the national interest. That is exactly what President Trump did. And when he was caught, when the House investigated and opened an impeachment inquiry, President Trump engaged in unprecedented, categorical, and indiscriminate defiance of the impeachment inquiry. This gives rise to the second article of impeachment for obstruction of Congress. A president who declares himself above accountability, above the American people, and above Congress's power of impeachment, which is meant to protect against threats to our democratic institutions, is a president who sees himself as above the law.
So when it comes to obstruction of justice, I want to be specific and detailed about why they feel that Donald Trump is guilty of obstruction here. The second article on obstruction of justice argued that Trump has directed the unprecedented, categorical, and indiscriminate defiance of subpoenas issued by the House of Representatives pursuant to its sole power of impeachment. President Trump has abused the powers of the presidency in a manner offense to and subversive of the Constitution. So we all know this. We all know that Trump stopped members of his administration from complying with congressional subpoenas. There were a number of individuals who said that they would be willing to comply, but the Trump administration stepped in and told them not to. And Trump himself refused to be part of the proceedings. He and his lawyers were invited to some of these public hearings and they refused to show up.
Okay, as usual, quick fun comment before we get to substance and context. So that was Elliot Engel you saw creeping into the shot. Must have gotten a note from a staffer. You're not in the TV shot, get in there. So he's got a progressive opponent, Jamal Bowman. You should check him out. That's why he needed to be on TV in that shot. Anyway, onto the substance. So there's only 2 counts. I would have gone with 4, 5, 8. No, all kidding aside, I wouldn't have gone with 8. I would have gone with at least 5. And so the 4 criminal counts, one is campaign finance violation, so they don't put that in there. He asked for assistance from a foreign country. I don't know why they don't put it in there. It drives me crazy when they needlessly pull up, right? Another one is potentially bribery, but there's an important nuance that I want to come back to. That's saying I'm going to hold up your money, the quid pro quo, if you don't give me. And then I would have put in the obstruction of justice under Mueller. There's an asterisk there. I'm going to come back to that too. And I would have also gone for the hush money payments, which was another campaign finance violation his co-conspirators in prison for right now. And then I would have done a separate obstruction charge on him not providing any witnesses and not cooperating with the impeachment inquiry. So that one is in there. And then they summarize the Ukraine stuff into abusing his office for personal gain. So I like that. I like abusing his office for personal gain because it's very easy to prove and it's easy to understand. And so overall, I'm open to the idea that I might be wrong, that maybe if you solidify it into just these 2 things, it makes it easier to grasp and easier to prosecute. It's possible. So I'd love to be wrong. I would love for Democratic leadership to be correct here and for it to work and for there to be enough political pressure that they actually convict him in the Senate or he resigns. So we'll see how that plays out. I have an open mind on that.
Yeah, I think I mostly agree with you, Cenk. So first, let me just note that when it comes to hush money payments or any type of other financial crime, right? And I say financial crimes to benefit him in his election, or they didn't even focus on that at all or investigate that as part of the impeachment investigation, right? So there was some talk by some Democrats, I'm guessing those on the more progressive end of the political spectrum, who wanted to do more of an investigation into those crimes. They wanted to include the obstruction of justice outlined in the Mueller report and include that as part of their charges. And the so-called moderate Democrats, meaning Democrats from some of these swing districts, were like, no, please don't do that, please don't do that. And there are some rumors indicating that 2 of those Democrats are likely to vote no on the articles of impeachment.
Yeah, just let them vote no. I don't care. I think that it's a stupid losing strategy. Whoever who is a Democrat that votes no on impeachment articles, I'd be shocked if they didn't lose, because they're basically saying the Republicans are right about everything. We're losers. Make sure you don't vote for us. So let's see how it turns out. Again, I'd love to be wrong about that. I'd love for them to win their re-election as opposed to a Republican. But historically, that's been a terrible political strategy. So now, again, back to the substance of the counts. I agree with Anna that. So, for example, the 2 asterisks that I laid out. One is on the bribery quid pro quo. You could argue that, and of course they are arguing that instead of saying bribery, which by the way is an impeachable offense outside of high crimes and misdemeanors, it is actually laid out in the Constitution. That is one of the specific crimes mentioned for why you would be impeached. I would have gone in that direction. I'm sure they thought it would be hard to prove, etc. I don't think it's hard to prove at all. But they put it under the umbrella of abusing his office. So it is what it is, and take that for what it's worth. Okay, now the other asterisk is obstruction of justice. So they did not include the Mueller charges, but some congressmen, including Steve Cohen, are saying, no. The language is broad enough that if we want to, we could bring that in. So without making it a separate article, Steve Cohen, for example, Democrat of Tennessee, said it is a, quote, a reference to a continuing pattern of behavior. So under that pattern of behavior, you could bring in the obstruction on the Russia investigation as well. I hope he's right about that, and I would go in that direction. But remember, they're gonna vote really quickly, and then boom, Trump's gonna be impeached. And so, and obviously, we've been covering it a lot on the show a lot, so I hope you know impeachment doesn't mean he gets removed from office. That's just the first portion, that happens in the House. Then you go to the Senate for a trial, and there, the senators are the jurors. The House appoints House managers that go to be in essence the prosecutors, and the Senate tries them. And that looks like that's going to happen next year. So that is now another big news here. I don't want to bury the lead here. Is this means Trump's impeachment is imminent? Yes,
definitely. Yeah. So he's expected to get impeached. The House is expected, because it's controlled by Democrats, to vote overwhelmingly to impeach him. Now, I was gonna go to a video featuring Adam Schiff at that press conference, outlining and making the case for impeachment. But I'm gonna be honest with you guys, he's so bad at making the case, not because the substance isn't there, the substance is there, but he bores me to tears and he seems so dispassionate. So I wanna go to a video featuring Eric Swalwell. And this is actually from the House Judiciary Committee hearing yesterday. And in it, he is questioning both the Republican counsel and the Democratic counsel. And he perfectly summarizes why Donald Trump should be impeached. Take a look.
We know what the president did, and we know when he knew it. Mr. Goldman, who sent Rudy Giuliani to Ukraine to smear Joe Biden?
President Trump.
Who fired the anti-corruption ambassador in Ukraine, Marie Yovanovitch?
President Trump.
Who told Ambassador Sondland and Ambassador Volker to work with Rudy Giuliani on Ukraine?
President Trump.
Who told Vice President Pence to not go to President Zelensky's inauguration?
President Trump.
Who ordered his own chief of staff, Mick Mulvaney, to withhold critical military assistance for Ukraine?
President Trump.
Who refused to meet with President Zelensky in the Oval Office?
President Trump.
Who ignored on July 25 his own National Security Council's anti-corruption talking points?
President Trump.
Who asked President Zelensky for a favor?
President Trump.
Who personally asked President Zelensky to investigate his political rival, Joe Biden?
President Trump.
Who stood on the White House lawn and confirmed that he wanted Ukraine to investigate Vice President Biden?
President Trump.
Who stood on that same lawn and said that China should also investigate Vice President Biden?
President Trump.
As to anything that we do not know in this investigation, who has blocked us from knowing it?
President Trump in the White House.
I thought that that was an excellent line of questioning that perfectly summarized why Donald Trump is in this mess in the first place and why these articles of impeachment have been brought forward by congressional Democrats.
Yeah, look, if we were in a just society that cared about truth and principles, this would be a slam dunk case. And putting aside our differences on how to impeach Donald Trump, the count of abusing his office for personal political gain is absolutely, positively inarguable. That is why the Republicans actually don't argue it. That's why they argue process, and I should have gotten an additional hearing, et cetera. Now, the reality is President Trump has the ability to show up at the House or the Senate to defend himself. In fact, he has in the past said, only the mob takes the Fifth Amendment. If you take the Fifth Amendment, that means you're guilty. And in essence, Trump is saying here, I'm gonna take the Fifth Amendment. I don't wanna incriminate myself, so I'm not coming in front of these hearings. Even with all of his counsel and all the Republicans that defend him, he won't show up. In fact, there's news today that in the Senate, the Republicans might not even put on a case for Donald Trump. Their argument is going to be, well, we are ignoring every piece of evidence that is put forward. In fact, we'll tell you that it is the opposite of what you just heard. So we're not gonna bother putting on a case. The real reason they're not putting on a case is they have no case.
They have no case.
They have no case. It's absolutely slam dunk. If you cared about the substance, the legality, and the facts, President Trump would definitely be convicted and removed from office on abusing his office for personal political gain alone. Thanks for watching the Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.